Hey folks, and welcome back to Glenn and Adrian's Rock Talk. That's Adrian.
And that's Glenn.
And today we're going to return to Sina with a clip that's actually quite old, but it has been requested. And it just so happens that I know Adrian is a fan of the band. It's Sina doing Iron Butterfly's In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida with some friends. You know, it's a full band recreation. And Adrian, it's your birthday today, so I want to shout you out and say happy birthday.
Thank you. Yeah, today I turned 28.
Yeah, good age. Of course, I'm only 18, so I just went over a Sina Q&A from many years ago, and over on the other channel on Modern Rock Talk. And that was fun, but one of the people that had put in a question for her was Andre Serbu, I think is how it's pronounced. I hope so. He had asked, so how does a guy get to collaborate with you on your channel, you know? And she said, well, you have to be a monster. I don't remember what terminology she used. Anyway, it turned out to be him. Apparently he was good enough. And what I heard in that clip was he's a pretty hot guitar player. So the other two people in this clip are going to be Christian Wolf and Rick Benbow. And she says, this is actually the most requested song on my channel, but it was really hard to recreate. Without Rick, Andre, and Christian, it would have been impossible. So a big thanks to all. This was dropped on December 1st of 2017. So by far the earliest clip that we've seen of Sina. But again, it was requested by a number of people here too. So seems appropriate. And we've wanted to look at a full band reaction. Or that is, you know, something that Sina was part of. So, Adrian, any thoughts ahead before we look at this?
Well, I'm kind of psyched to hear this. I know what a good drummer Sina is, and you know, this whole In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida, I've listened to. I don't know how many times I've listened to the song. Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing it. You know, yeah. It'd be spectacular if they were able to recreate it.
Yeah, we'll take a look at it and find out. Now, I'm going to be perfectly blunt and say, even though I respect Iron Butterfly, and I've heard some of their records, I really haven't listened to this piece very often. I can identify it in the wild, but I don't know that I've heard the whole 17 minutes before, so I'm excited about that. The original was recorded on May 27, 1968, and became side 2 of their second album, In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida, which came out on June 14. So a short 2.5 weeks later. This is a highly revered song amongst classic rock circles. It was by far the album that sold the most for them. It's kind of their signature song. And of course, we know about Sina, and we appreciate her work. So interested to see what was going on for her at this point, 2017. All right. So yeah, let's go ahead and check it out.
In
Oh, man. Wow. Okay. So how accurate was that, Adrian?
Well, I guess instead of doing the song as written, they put their own spin on the song, and they did a good job at it. Actually, especially the keyboardists and the guitarists especially came up with their own solos. They took plenty of artistic license, and I think they're qualified to do that. So.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, except possibly Sina. I think I hear a lot of the key parts in her drums, and it sounds quite like the original. I would say she plays with 99.995% accuracy.
I think that is her signature with these videos. I think she is trying to actually completely recreate the original parts. And on occasion, we do hear a little bit of artistic license from her, but it's usually very, very minor stuff.
Yeah, I mean, as far I guess being nitpicky about the keyboards, it was kind of a good decision to replace. Well, the original had a Vox Continental organ, and in this one there's a Hammond sounding organ and a Church sounding organ. I think it's kind of smart to kind of use those instead of the Vox Continental. That's sort of how they made the song their own.
Okay.
I think it was mainly Sina and the guy playing bass that were pretty much sticking to the formula, I think.
Well, good. Yeah, in a situation like this, I think they are the key members that should try to stick with it just to keep the original form as much as possible. And then the guitar player and the keyboard player can go off a little bit and it's fine. It's kind of expected, really, on those instruments, whereas you want the rhythm to really just keep the skeleton in place. I thought that was very, very cool. And I don't think I've heard the entire thing. I may have heard it once. I may have heard it one time at one point, because it wasn't entirely unfamiliar when they went to things, but I could not have told you how these parts went, before listening to this. I heard a lot of Eastern influence in the playing, especially of the keyboards. I could hear a lot of things that sound like they came from Arabic lands, And meanwhile, I noticed he also snuck a Christmas carol in there. It sounded like God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen.
Oh, yeah. That's on the original, actually.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, let me look through some of the notes on the original song. I thought I saw something about Jeff Beck going to a show, and he said that the thing went on for 35 minutes, which I guess you can do, right, with this one?
Yeah, live you can definitely do that, especially with an Iron Butterfly crowd.
I don't know, maybe someday we can take a look at the Iron Butterfly version, although I do enjoy having video to go along with these songs, especially if they're long songs, as much as possible, but maybe we'll look to that. Like I say, I'm not unfamiliar with Iron Butterfly. I like the idea of the band. I like their sound, and I like a lot of other bands that were their contemporaries. Like I've been playing 10 Years After a lot lately, and that's kind of the same ballpark in terms of rock and roll from the late 60s. I really enjoyed it. I thought regardless, it was a great performance. They all sounded on point.
Oh, yeah. This would pass as a modern performance by Iron Butterfly for sure.
Yeah.
I think I'd give this a 4.9 out of 5 stars.
Oh, okay.
Not a replica, but great nonetheless.
Pretty good. Yeah, the only last note I had was that keyboard, maybe it was an actual Hammond-type keyboard. It had drawbars on it. I noticed that. But it didn't really sound like a typical Hammond either. Some kind of a hybrid, it seems like.
Yeah, it's possible. I know that I used to have a video where I know there's at least one video out there somewhere of them doing In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida. But in that video, he had a Vox Continental organ.
What I know about the song, it sounds like they did a pretty faithful rendition. But again, I don't know all 17 minutes. I probably knew the single version a lot better than the 17 minutes. I knew about the drum solo. There were really two of them in there. That's always been called out by people as something to listen to. but mostly I've heard people do air drums to it. And you know what I was thinking, actually, while Sina was playing that, is this came out right about the same time as A Saucer Full of Secrets, and so I wonder, and it wasn't a replica, but it was certainly from the same school. You know, it's like they were brothers. You know, they were siblings. Yeah, so I wonder about that. If anybody knows about any interactions between these bands, I know that they both played the Fillmore in San Francisco around this time period, but I don't know the exact dates, so I couldn't really put a timeline together right now. But if anybody knows more about that, please let me know in the comments below, okay? And why don't you all let us know what you thought of this? I was pretty impressed. You know, I thought that was cool. It was a good listen, and it was well played, and it brought out a lot of psychedelic thoughts and feelings, you know, kind of as we went along. Yeah, if you have other suggestions for us, you can leave those below as well. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. And if you enjoyed our presentation, please subscribe. Don't forget, we do have a second channel, Modern Rock Talk. Like I said, I've got a Sina Q&A over there. I'd actually love to find an interview. I'm kind of tempted to reach out and see if I can get one. I think it would be a long shot, but probably worth trying. So, but if there's something existing, let us know about that. Maybe I'll feature it on that channel. And again, thanks for joining us today on this one, and we will catch you on the next one, all right? Take care, folks.
See you all later.